It is now my pleasure to welcome to our main stage, Carl Hayden Smith. Carl is the director of the Learning Technology Research Center and Principal Research Fellow at the Institute for Creativity and Technology at Ravensbourne University, London. He has 20 years' experience conducting research and development into the application of hybrid technologies for perceptual, cognitive, and creative transformation. His research focuses on generating new forms of media, including neuroadaptive mixed reality training, natural media, and wearable experience. He has given over 300 invited public lectures, conference presentations, and keynotes in 40 countries, and published more than 100 academic papers. His research interests include embodied cognition, spatial literacy, unwelt hacking, sensory augmentation, artificial senses, and body hacking. I first had the pleasure of meeting Carl this past April when he and his team reached out to Kalamazoo Valley to invite us to be a partner in their rapid reskilling training program that was developed and launched as a part of the XPRIZE competition. Through this partnership, my eyes were open to the world of XR technology and the opportunities for application in work-based learning and training. Not only is Carl one of the leading experts in XR technology, but he is also just an all-around nice guy. In today's address, Carl will explore the design and application of virtual reality and augmented reality technologies to augment, support, and transform learning, industry training, and work-based training. We will explore how to develop immersive XR application areas with the help of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and sensory augmentation. These areas will be framed using two projects: the Hobs 3D Skills Academy, funded by the London Legacy Development Corporation, and the Rapid Employment and Accessibility Platform, funded by the XPRIZE. Here now is Carl Hayden Smith for his address titled Exploring the Design and Application of XR, VR, and AR Technologies to Augment, Support, and Transform Learning, Industry Training, and Work-Based Learning.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Wonderful introduction. Let me share my screen, get started. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen okay. So I'm going to jump straight into a little bit of background. So my average day, this is actually a keynote I gave in Melbourne with this guy down here, which is Ray Kurzweil. He's the Director of Engineering at Google. And I had a bit of a battle with him on his transhumanist agenda, which I think is kind of misguided. Transhumanism is all around life extension and becoming cyborgs. And I'm actually championing something called hyperhumanism, which is all around, using technology as a scaffold to create skills, but then you actually, you develop those skills yourself. You don't rely on the machine. And I think one of the big things that I'm concerned about is our cognitive sort of, outsourcing to the machine. And I think that's quite evident. When we lose our phones, we suddenly are lost. I'm also very interested in AI and machine learning, but machine learning and AI for good. I think, again, there's a lot of problems with the automation of a lot of jobs that are going to leave a lot of people in a lot of trouble. So this was at the European Economic Congress just before the pandemic. So just to talk a little bit about my own university, Ravensbourne University, London. So we're very much industry focused. We're very much industry facing in terms of the courses that we put on. We work with industries like British Telecom. British Telecom will come to us and ask us to develop courses for them specifically. So they'll take all of our graduates who pass that course. We've also got an extremely high employability rate because we're very practice-based, I believe, and we also incubate student businesses. So students will come through their degrees and actually then want to start their own companies, and we actually incubate those companies as well as others inside the university. We also have a rapid innovation lab And my lab, which is the Learning Technology Research Center, very much focused on cognitive science and how do we use technology to learn in all of its different areas. So this is Ravensbourne. This is, you may know about the O2. This is the biggest entertainment venue in the world, right in the North Greenwich Peninsula. This is Ravensbourne here, and this is actually my new office in this, what we're calling the design district, which is basically like we're building Manhattan in North Greenwich. This is my new office here. So exciting times. This is all just being built over the last couple of years. So in terms of my research center, we have this local mission to obviously look at those technologies and make sure that they fit in with our practice-based courses. For me, research only makes sense if it actually feeds back down into the staff knowledge and student knowledge, and making sure that they can utilize that research. But more of a global mission is for me to keep Ravensbourne competitive at multiple levels. And that's obviously focused on those technologies, and particularly the immersive and hybrid technologies like XR, VR, AR, mixed reality. But then I'm very interested in the frameworks of use. What are the best practices for those technologies? Because it's no good just having endless lists of technologies if you don't know how to use them. And that's when the third level comes in, which is around the technology standards and things like the IEEE standard ARLEM, which is an AR learning experience modeling protocol that my colleague Fridolin Wild has developed. And yeah, it's very much about how do we create these technology standards. And finally, I'm very much interested in policy. How do we get this stuff, enacted and into different, universities, not just in the UK, but across Europe and the world. So I'm often down at the House of Lords, House of Commons, talking around digital strategy. So I'm just going to start with a couple of projects. This is a big one that we won in 2015. It was 3 million euros from the Horizon, the Horizon program. Horizon is effectively, we've had FP7s, FP8s, FP9s. FP9's the current one. It's about 5% of GDP to keep all the creativity inside Europe. And yeah, it's the budget this year is around 100 billion euros. So it's a huge amount of money. We were ranked number 1 in the call of about 174 proposals. And this project was all around how do we create something called Wearable Experience. So imagine a new form of media where we're taking advantage of the invention at that point of the HoloLens, which is a mixed reality headset, which enables us to hack the apprentice expert relationship. Because what we did in this project was actually enable the performance tracking of an expert. And I'll talk you through some of the use cases, but we worked with groups like Lufttransport on aircraft maintenance. And aircraft maintenance has a lot of experts doing specific tasks. And what we can do with the HoloLens is once you're wearing it, we can track your eye movement, your head movement, and your hand movement. And now individually with the HoloLens 2, you can actually track the individual hand and finger movement. So we're actually able to create ghost hands and a ghost of the expert's performance. And then a novice can wear the same headset and see those hand movements in relation to the task and actually wear the expert. So you're literally wearing the expert. Instead of watching a YouTube video of how to do a task, you can literally wear the expert and be in their body and actually do the task from their perspective. And we've actually, increased knowledge transfer by up to 40% by actually producing this technology. So as I mentioned, Lufttransport aircraft maintenance was one of our industry partners on the project. Medical diagnostics with an Italian company called EBIT. And we also work with astronauts and astronaut trainers at Altec in Italy, which is the Italian space agency. And that was super fascinating. This was actually one of the trainers. This is an astronaut trainer in an ISS copy, which is actually housed in one of those ginormous hangars in Turin. So this, if you've not seen or worn a HoloLens or a mixed reality device, this is what happens when you put it on. You start to create And that's how augmented reality works. This is our trainees. These are our Lufttransport trainees. And we're actually getting them to do the training with the software that we developed. And this is all about spatial computing. So it's all around tagging information in space. So instead of screens, you're actually able to tag information to give you this just-in-time learning, just-in-place learning. So spatial computing is the next level of personal computing, and it's really the killer app for mixed reality, because you're able to move away from things like these paper-based or screen-based handouts, and you're actually able to do your learning in situ. So we actually worked on the Mars rover and maintaining the Mars rover. So it's very expensive to train astronauts. And if you can actually upload, a bit like the Matrix, if you can upload the learning whilst they're on the ISS for a task that they have to do, they may not have been trained on the ground to do it, but we can actually, there's already HoloLenses on the International Space Station, and we're able to upload to the astronauts the learning that they need to do in order to actually, do their tasks. And obviously Mars missions are happening, they're already planned. So this is actually a real scale mock-up of the Mars rover in Turin at Altec. This was our second use case. So the other part of the project was to actually create what has now been is becoming quite common, to measure the effective state of the learner. Because if we look at things like Vygotsky's zone of proximal development is a cognitive science theory that if you're stressed out, you're not going to learn. If you're actually relaxed and you're concentrating, you're more likely to be pushed into your zone of proximal development, which just means that your complexity on the learning can increase as you go. So how do we measure the effective state? And this was our task, one of our tasks in the Horizon 2020 project, which was to actually create a wearable that would measure your effective state with multiple sensors. So these were the kinds of sensors that we were actually embedding in this garment. Things like heart rate variability, galvanic skin response, which measures stress through sweat, and also temperature, so body temperature. Those three sensors alone, combined in something called sensor fusion, enables us to measure your effective state. So how stressed are you? How concentrated are you? And I'll talk a little bit more when we get onto the XPRIZE about how we've moved into more basically easier ways of capturing that data. So we actually work with students at Ravensbourne to mock up this garment, and these were some of the mock-ups. As I mentioned, it's very important for us to get students involved, even in very high-level projects, because that's effectively what's going to get the students into the institution, keep them engaged, understanding that they're also part of these projects. So we had to work on specific fabrics. I mentioned the sensors, and we also had to actually, because we had those three different industry partners, we had to work out where on the garment these sensors could go that wouldn't interfere with the work practice. So for instance, we were working in Norway with Lufttransport, it's extremely cold, and in Turin with the astronauts, extremely hot. So again, those factors all came into this participatory design practice of making sure that we could only make one wearable. We couldn't make three wearables for those industries. So this was some of the work that we did in planning that stuff. And we actually had to then build it all. So we looked at different ways of wiring everything, and then actually used 3D printing to actually create these enclosures in order to house all of those sensors. This is Mark, one of our team, who's a bit of a whiz with all of these components, and we even branded our own electronics. And we even hacked the HoloLens. So this, if you haven't seen it, is the HoloLens 1, Microsoft's device. Thank God we actually had this at the time, because if this hadn't have come out in 2015, we would not have been able to do the project. And much like any kind of business, if you don't fulfill the brief that you've put down, which becomes your description of work, then you have to give the money back to the commission. So it's very important that you fulfill your brief, and it was a really tough one that we were very ambitious. So we actually, because of the problems with motion artifacts, when you're wearing something on your wrist, for instance, if you're wearing a heart rate variability monitor, which is what you can see in the middle of the image here, then that's the heart rate variability. So we put it on the temple so that it wouldn't interfere with hand gestures, etc., when you're actually working. So these are some of the mock-ups of the wearable. And we ended up with this device, which was actually a harness, which had all those sensors embedded, primarily because it was much easier to have this than a wearable, because you'd obviously still be wearing maybe a uniform in those job roles that we would get interference. So Microsoft picked up on this work, and at the time they had something called Microsoft Guides, which was frankly not very good. And so they were very interested in our software because it was much more advanced. And this was actually Microsoft HoloLens team on this side of the table, meeting my team on the other side and talking through how we could collaborate. And we've continued that work. So moving on to other things that we do at Ravensbourne. So we do a lot of work in terms of learning technology, in terms of building our own hardware and software. This, for instance, was a 360 camera built from GoPro knockoffs. So that were around 10% of the price, Chinese manufactured devices. And this created an ability to create a 16K camera, much higher resolution than anything you could buy like off the shelf. And so this is some of the innovation that we bring to the party. And for a fraction of the price, it was around £2,000 to produce. And then also we're very interested in the coming metaverse. I'm sure you've heard the term, but I'll talk about it a little bit later in the talk. So we built a holoportal in 2015, and it was what we call a volumetric capture studio. And you can see the camera rigs on the roof there. And what that enables us to do is actually take moving imagery and turn it into content that we can use in multiple contexts. So we can actually create content for animation, content for film, and this is the kind of content that we're creating. So these were footballers that we captured with that rig, and basically we're combining those camera views to create these holograms. And these holograms then go directly inside the HoloLens. And this is actually me wearing the HoloLens and placing those footballers on a shelf. And this is mixed reality, where you're combining the digital with the real. And you can see the quality. And this is way back in 2016. So you can imagine how much things have moved on since then. So way back in 2016, we did the world's first mixed reality fashion show. And again, we had the London Fashion Week models from London Fashion Week come to the holoportal, and we scanned them in there. And then down at a hotel in central London, we had this fashion show. And what you turn up and you find your HoloLens, put your HoloLens on, and then you're seeing the catwalk completely virtually, or mixed reality is giving you this fashion show. And then you can have that fashion show anywhere you want. Through that device.
I need a bit of advice. Who can I beam into the operating theatre? I know, I'll call my colleague Shafi. Hi, Carl. Hi, Shafi. How can I help you? You called me. Great. We've got a bit of an issue in the operating theatre. Can you offer some advice? Of course. Let's see what we can do for you. Thanks for calling me in.
So what you're seeing here
Fantastic.
is the holoportal in the background. This is actually again from 2016, so extremely low resolution. But what you're seeing there is Shafi here, who's part of Medical Realities. He's in the holoportal, and we're literally just scanning him in real time and looking through another HoloLens. So the other HoloLens is filming me, who's actually watching him. So it's a bit like Star Trek or Star Wars. And again, this teleportation idea of actually being able to bring in an expert to your scene and actually have this embodied guidance. So we've got a lot of press for the holoportal. We're now building a second one. And we've also, like I said, we had about 600 projects, staff and student projects, even within 2 years. So it's an amazing piece of technology to maybe have within your own colleges. And it's not expensive to produce these days, to produce something like a volumetric capture studio, but it enables you to build content for the metaverse, for this ability to have your lecturers, actually embodied. And instead, and during the pandemic, there's a lot of students being very unhappy about not being able to come in to have a physical experience. They're paying a lot of money, especially in America and the UK, to do these courses, but they're not able. They're all stuck at home, and they're basically looking at these screens, and they're not really able to design together. They're not able to work together in an embodied sense. In the metaverse, they'll be able to come into a space. It could be a digital twin of your own institution, and they're able to create and work together in that space. So from the WeKit project, the Horizon 2020 project, we actually got some funding from Erasmus Plus, another European funding body, to create a dedicated course which you can check out. It's AR3 was the project title. The website's codereality.net, and on there you'll see, because it's a dedicated course just for mixed reality, we've got a basic and an advanced course which has all of these different aspects of how do you work with mixed reality. So things like modeling, storytelling, animation, spatial understanding, research directions, etc. So that's the basic course, and this is the advanced course. So absolutely feel free. It's completely free, this course. Feel free to use it to build your own courses from it. This was actually, it's all open source for everyone to use. So this was all around computer vision, understanding the careers in AR, volumetric video capture, how to do that, for instance. So lots of content there for you to have a look at. And then we got another load of funding from the London Mayor, which is part of London Legacy Development Corporation, to create a specific academy, which is effectively a finishing school for industry. So a lot of the courses that we develop, we don't necessarily get the students across the line where industry are ready to accept them. There's a gap between the university courses and the industry need. So what we did is we went to industry and we said, what are the absolute skill sets that you really need? For instance, in this building digital twins, or in the metaverse, in architecture, it's common to build these digital twins. So very expensive to build an architectural project. So what happens is that they create a digital twin of the building. So it's an exact replica of the building, and it enables tracking of how the building is being used. So flow of traffic through the building, the electricity use, etc., etc. And it becomes like a living copy of the structure. It can be very expensive to produce as well, but there's something called clash detection in digital twinning, which is basically a specific job where all of the students could be getting jobs in, because there's such a massive demand. So what we focused on in this 3D skills course is 3D printing, 3D modeling, and VR and AR. It's a 12-week course, and we actually give the course for free. It's a 2-year pilot with the funding for East Londoners. So the only requirement is they live in a certain borough of London in order to have access to the course. But we've had amazing take-up of the course, amazing feedback. And I think this is kind of the new model for education, where you really need to know what the jobs are that the students are going to be able to go into. And this is what's led us into the XPRIZE and the rapid reskilling competition. We were very lucky to be a part of it. We were one of 118 teams that entered, and only 10 teams were selected. And we're actually the only European team. So it's a $5 million purse, and we're now luckily in the semi-finals. Thanks mainly actually to our collaborations with KVCC, Tracy, and Bill, who I've got a photo of in a bit. But what's interesting is that during the pandemic there was a prediction that we would have the Great Depression again, like in the 30s, 1930s. But actually what seems to have happened is there's been a great resignation, with a lot of people having left their physical workplaces, and been at home, maybe working from home if they were lucky, have just decided to quit their jobs. And if you're not already burnt out from, commuting to work, etc., there's a huge problem both in the UK and America, where there are many millions of jobs that are just not recruiting. And we have to ask, why is that? What is it about those jobs? Is it because those jobs are so dehumanizing that people just aren't prepared to do them? Obviously, we know that there's been lots of furloughing in the UK and similar programs in America, where people have been paid to keep their jobs going, to not have a worldwide crash. But what is this great resignation about? So there is a huge problem. There's over 1.36 million jobs in America alone that they're trying to recruit for, and absolutely there's the similar problem in the UK. So there's increasing automation, and there's websites where you can go and see how long will your job exist for before it's automated. And one of the things that we have to do with the XPRIZE, this rapid reskilling competition, is to look at those job roles that are growing and are not likely to be automated. So we've done a lot of market analysis in terms of the competition, specifically looking at America with the XPRIZE. But we have a huge addressable market for the kind of solution that we're developing. So our solution is, as Tracy mentioned, this rapid reskilling, rapid employment and accessibility platform. So we're taking the unemployed, and it's not just the unemployed, but it's the pretty much the down and outs of America, who don't have college degrees, who are pretty much unskilled or underskilled, and we take those through this program. So these component parts are different startups and universities. So I'm from Ravensbourne University. Mind is our startup that focuses in on, remember I talked you through the biometrics and actually measuring affective state, because it's not really enough nowadays just to put somebody in a training scenario. You need to know, intuitively, as much as you can, how much they're learning, whether they are indeed learning or not. And so Mind specialize in the ability to measure affective state just from voice. So instead of needing to wear this entire wearable outfit, you're actually able to measure up to 6 different emotional states just from a phone app. So that's a big increase in ability to use biometrics. For me, though, biometrics are very sensitive in terms of data. So what we also have is another startup here called Cryotech. Cryotech are post-quantum encryption, because we want to encrypt all of those biometrics so that that data is entirely safe and not going anywhere. We also encrypt all of the VR and AR training, so that again is locked down and cannot be sold or hacked. So we also have mixed reality. So again, I'm going to show you a little video later on. So we're focused in on machining as our first job role, and that's why we've been working closely with KVCC. And it's been a fantastic process so far. It's a bit like an X factor for startups, incredibly tough timelines. It's all very rapid, and it's tricky, because I think that there's an issue when you talk about rapid learning, that is stressful, and it's like life is stressful enough without being forced to do things rapidly. So I'm a bit torn with that concept. But if you are being supported, if you are learning through these techniques that enable you to learn 40% more quickly because you're wearing the expert, for instance, then maybe yes, you can learn more rapidly. So we built a company out of the XPRIZE competition. It's REAP, and it's neuroadaptive mixed reality training as a service, which is very important. And it's hyper personalized upskilling at scale. And our ambitions are great, whereas we're looking to upskill up to 1 billion people without prior experience into these new jobs that cannot be automated. That's a very important aspect. And if you've seen the news recently, I'm not a big fan of Facebook, although I do use their platform. They're already hiring 10,000 people in Europe to build this metaverse. And just to explain a little bit more about the metaverse. So the metaverse is the sort of the new economy. It is the idea that you have a lot of 2D web pages out there that will become 3D worlds. So you may not visit eBay as a 2D web page anymore. You may go into a 3D world of eBay. Facebook has already built their 3D world, which is being accessible and made accessible through the Oculus Quest 2 and Quest 1. And basically their metaverse is called Horizon. And you've got lots of companies like NVIDIA, Unreal. Unreal are actually producing all the tools for building the metaverse, and they give away all those tools for free in order to be the world leaders of the, the construction of the metaverse. So it's going to be a huge employer, and you as college, the colleges that are building these graduates up for employment have to be made aware that these kinds of opportunities are coming. And it's going to incorporate all sorts of different job roles inside the metaverse, whether it's programming, whether it's, human computer interaction, whether it's all these things are going to be needed. And it is much like the, mixed reality is the next level of personal computing. The metaverse is the next level of the economy and the big employer. And you're seeing companies like this one. This is again news from 6 days ago. Accenture has acquired 60,000 Oculus Quest 2s to train their staff, and that's a huge number of Oculus Quests. And it's basically the way forward, I think, because obviously the pandemic is still going to go on for a while, and if you can train staff in 3D, then in short periods. I'm not advocating wearing VR for long periods of time. There are like health and safety times when you maybe use it for half an hour at a time. But if you're using it with a good protocol, i.e. with good understandings of physiology, psychology, all of these jobs are needed as well in the metaverse. So our solution, as I've mentioned, has 3 advantages over existing training solutions. So we're hyper-personalized, we have this seamless integration of VR and AR, and we have this encryption. So Bill Kring, fantastic tutor. So what we're saying here is we're not replacing traditional learning. We're not at all. We're just literally creating another tool for the toolbox where you can actually learn with live sessions like we have with Bill. And the key for the XPRIZE is scaling up. So we're moving into the next round where we go from 300 trainees to 5,000 across 3 job roles. And the other job roles we're looking at are things like cybersecurity and 3D skills. There's so many jobs in building the metaverse. We think that this is a great target and a great use of VR and AR. So there is a massive, time is on our side in the sense that VR and AR is now gaining maturity. The Oculus, it's so cheap to buy primarily because, they're making a loss, actually, Facebook on the hardware. And obviously they want your data. So that's one of the concerns I have is giving my data over to Facebook. I have to encrypt all of that data to make it usable in the XPRIZE. So neuroadaptivity, as I mentioned, is also becoming more available, more cheap to use. The pandemic's had a big factor in a lot of the development and the uptake of VR. Automation, as I've mentioned, is coming thick and fast. So how do we, as I say here, new jobs will appear, but which ones? What are those jobs? A lot of those jobs don't exist yet, or we don't know what they are. So it's a little bit about like fortune telling, being a futurist, understanding the factors. But our platform, it doesn't actually matter so much because it's content agnostic and can be used to provide any form of content delivery. So pre-existing solutions can be very long, very expensive, and quite often can be unreliable. And they don't enable you a lot of the time to do your practice. So the kinds of things that we're capturing in VR and AR are the things that will take you multiple times to practice, and you don't have the access to the trainer for that amount of time. So our solution is faster, cheaper, and more reliable. And yeah, I think that, like I said, this is just an additional tool that can be applied to your existing solutions. So our solution is a smart app, and also this use of VR and AR. So the mobile app, again, it's about enabling the learner. So working on your own schedule, studying anywhere, anytime. So you may be due to have an exam, but you can study on the bus. You're able to track your own progress. You can have like a support system where we're on the other end of the other end of the app, where we can field your questions. You know, it also enables accessibility options. And you know, we're actually a full employment service with the XPRIZE. It's not just about the training; it's about getting them. We have to place those trainees into work, and not only that, we have to keep them in work. So it's about retaining them in work, which I think is actually in terms of morality, is a much stronger, even though it's really tough, it's a much stronger, proposal than just doing the training and then forgetting. You know, it's like a project finishes, the funding finishes, it's all over. For us, it's very much about working with those candidates and making sure they're happy and the employers are happy. So as I mentioned, these are sort of the component parts of the process. You've heard about the top parts, but it's very much about this bespoke training design, collaborative upskilling, and well-being support. So the reason why we're using the biosensing and the biometrics is to make sure that the coming mental health crisis is also addressed, because we know that there's a huge increase in problems with mental health. So how can we use these technologies to support mental health? And as I mentioned, it's not just an app; it's an end-to-end employment process where you're going through the assessments. We're actually enabling on the app job opportunities come up live, and yeah, it's very much about how do we work with the employers and how do we work with the candidates to find the best match. So this is my team. Extremely proud of them all, and yeah, they all bring different things to the party. We have a lot of different collaborators in the project as well, and we're very much interested in anything you have to say about the project and any feedback. We're also doing an angel round and a funding round, so if you're interested in jumping on board, feel free to be in touch. I'll put my email in there. But this is a little bit of a video just to finish, to show you some of our trainees and the process.
If we were able to put some of these devices in people's hands, right, I think we can offer a lot more accessibility and engagement with a ton of different training, right, that potentially someone that may never even be exposed to it otherwise, right?
I've been looking for this for probably 3 or 4 years. I mean, I've been watching the community trying to figure out if anybody's got it. And the complexity of machinery, nobody's really tapped into it. You can recreate a cockpit, right? And you can put all the dials and you can create all that stuff. And that's why I think it's been in aviation so fast, right? And besides people like, organizations like Boeing and whatever have got behind it. But we're all pretty segmented, small in the machining space, right? I mean, relatively small. So this is new and this is interesting, very interesting. I go recruit from the same, pool of candidates that the other workforce does around here, and I have virtual welders on site, right? I lose students to welding left and right that could be machinists because of that. I'm impressed. I think it's awesome.
Okay, so I've got a few minutes for questions, but that's my email. I hope that's been interesting and comprehensive. It gives you some of the information you need to enact your own solutions on the ground in your own colleges. And yeah, feel free to get in touch. You can contact me on email, add me on Facebook, on my Twitter as well. I tend to use my Facebook as a blog to actually talk about all these different solutions. and what's exciting, what's useful. So feel free to have me there. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Carl. That was fascinating. The possibilities that technology brings to the table is just amazing to me, and I hope all of you enjoyed that as much as I did. Carl, we greatly appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise with us this morning, and we look forward to what your future research brings forward. And we wish you all the best with that.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Thanks so much, and thanks so much for the invite. Great event.
Thank you. We do have a question wondering if we would be able to have access to some of your slides and information.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay, great. We'll make sure that that's available for folks who would like to have that. So, okay, well, we will take a break now. For the next breakout, or I guess the first breakout sessions for today will begin at 9:15. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and enjoy the conference.